Clean faster or get out. The heavy rubber sole of a combat boot slammed violently into the center of Elijah Washington's lower back. The force was sudden, brutal, and calculated. It sent the 52-year-old man sprawling forward, his knees colliding painfully with the cold, wet tiles of the locker room floor. The mop he had been holding clattered loudly against a metal bench, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent gym. Dirty water from the bucket sloshed over the rim, soaking into the hem of Elijah's gray, worn-out uniform. The uniform that made him invisible to the wealthy clientele of the Apex Predator gym in downtown Seattle. "Oops, didn't see you there down on the floor where you belong," a voice sneered from above. Elijah didn't look up immediately. He stared at the puddle of grey water spreading across the pristine tiles he had just spent 20 minutes scrubbing. His hands, calloused and rough from years of manual labor, gripped the wet floor. They trembled. Not from fear, never from fear, but from a rage so ancient and deep it felt like magma moving beneath the earth. He took a slow, measured breath, inhaling the scent of bleach and expensive cologne. He forced his heart rate to slow down. He forced his fists to unclench. Standing over him was Brock Sterling. "I'm talking to you, old man!" Brock barked, kicking the mop bucket again, sending a fresh wave of dirty water over Elijah's shoes. "Look at this mess! You're useless! Maybe if you spent less time watching the fighters and more time scrubbing toilets, this place wouldn't smell like poverty." Elijah slowly pushed himself up. His joints popped, a reminder of a life lived hard. He kept his eyes lowered, fixing his gaze on Brock's expensive limited-edition sneakers. This was the ritual. This was the price of survival. "I apologize, Mr. Sterling," Elijah said, his voice low and gravelly, devoid of emotion. "I'll clean it up immediately." "You better," Brock spat, stepping over Elijah as if he were a pile of debris. He turned to the group of young, impressionable fighters watching from the doorway. They snickered, eager to please their idol. "See that? That's what happens when you don't have the hunger. You end up wiping up another man's sweat for minimum wage. Don't be a loser, be a predator." As Brock strutted away, leaving laughter in his wake, Elijah didn't move. He simply picked up the mop. What Brock didn't know, what nobody in this glass and chrome palace knew, was that the hands now wringing out a dirty mop had once been lethal weapons. Elijah Washington wasn't just a janitor. 20 years ago, he was a ghost, a chaotic force in the ring, a Golden Gloves champion, and later, a hand-to-hand combat specialist for a unit the military didn't like to talk about. He had forgotten more about violence than Brock Sterling would ever learn. But violence didn't pay for chemotherapy. Elijah closed his eyes for a second, and the image of his wife, Sarah, appeared in the darkness behind his eyelids. He remembered her fading away in that hospital bed 3 years ago, the crushing weight of the medical debt she left behind, and the promise he made to their daughter, Chloe. Chloe, who was now 18, brilliant, and accepted into Stanford, but without the tuition money, she would be trapped in the same cycle of poverty that was trying to drown him. That was why he took the abuse. That was why he let a man half his worth treat him like garbage. Every insult from Brock was $10 toward Chloe's tuition. Every kick was a textbook. Every humiliation was a future where his daughter didn't have to scrub floors. Elijah continued his rounds, moving into the main training area. It was evening, peak hours. The gym was alive with the sound of leather hitting leather, grunts of exertion, and the heavy bass of hip-hop music. In the center octagon, Brock was conducting a private session with Caleb, a 20-year-old college wrestler with rich parents and poor instincts. "Chin up! Be aggressive!" Brock shouted, slapping Caleb on the head. "When he shoots for the takedown, you sprawl and drop your hands low. Expose the neck to bait him." Elijah, wiping down a rowing machine nearby, paused. His body went rigid. The instruction was wrong. Fundamentally, dangerously wrong. Dropping the hands that low against a shooter left the carotid artery wide open for a guillotine choke. It was suicide. He watched as Brock demonstrated the move again, his form flashy, but flawed. He was teaching the boy how to look cool, not how to survive. "No," Elijah whispered, the words slipping out before he could catch it. The music seemed to cut out. The gym didn't actually go silent. But for Elijah, the world narrowed down to that octagon. Brock had heard him. "Excuse me?" Brock turned slowly, his eyes narrowing. He walked to the edge of the cage, looking down at Elijah. Did the janitor just say something? The entire gym turned to watch. Linda Russo, the gym manager who secretly hated Brock but feared for her job, looked up from the front desk with wide, terrified eyes. Elijah gripped his spray bottle. He should apologize, he should bow his head. But he looked at Caleb, a good kid who was going to get hurt because of this arrogance. "I said, that defense is dangerous," Elijah said, his voice carrying clearly across the room. "If he drops his hands like that, he's giving up his neck. He needs to frame the hips." Silence. Absolute, stunned silence. The wealthy clients stopped their treadmills. The fighters stopped their sparring. Brock's face turned a violent shade of red. He laughed, a high, incredulous sound. "Oh, this is rich! This is priceless! Ladies and gentlemen, stop your training! The janitor has an opinion!" Brock opened the cage door and stepped out, walking right up to Elijah until they were nose to nose. Brock was taller, but Elijah felt like a mountain. "You think, because you watch YouTube videos, you know how to fight?" Brock sneered, poking Elijah hard in the chest. "You clean toilets. I train champions. Know your place, boy." The word hung in the air, boy, a racial epithet loaded with history, used to strip a grown man of his dignity. Elijah's jaw tightened. The beast inside him, the one he had caged for 20 years, rattled the bars. "I'm just saying," Elijah said, his voice steady but icy. "You're teaching him to lose. Is that right?" Brock stepped back, spreading his arms wide, playing to the crowd. He pulled out his phone and started live streaming. "Okay, everyone. Since Mr. Washington here is an expert, let's see it. I challenge you. Get in the ring, show us this proper technique. Unless you're just a coward who likes to talk trash while emptying trash." "I have work to do," Elijah said, turning away. "That's what I thought," Brock yelled, capturing Elijah's retreating back on camera. "Walking away like a whipped dog. Don't ever speak to me about fighting again. From now on, you don't look at the ring, you look at the floor. Because that's all you're good for." Elijah walked into the supply closet and closed the door. In the darkness, surrounded by chemicals and mops, he leaned his head against the cool metal shelf. His hands were shaking again. He could kill him. He knew exactly how to dismantle Brock Sterling. It would take less than 30 seconds. But if he did, he'd lose the job. He'd lose the insurance. Chloe would lose Stanford. He swallowed the rage. It tasted like ash. But that night, the video Brock posted went viral. The caption read, "Janitor thinks he knows MMA better than a pro. Put him in his place. Know your role. Alpha the loser." Thousands of comments poured in, laughing at Elijah, calling him a wannabe, mocking his uniform. At home in their small, cramping apartment, Chloe found her father sitting at the kitchen table, staring at his hands. She had seen the video. Tears streamed down her face. "Dad," she whispered, touching his shoulder, "why do you let him treat you like that? You're 10 times the man he is." Elijah looked at his daughter, the only pure thing in his world. "Pride is a luxury, baby girl. We can't afford it right now." "But it's not just pride," Chloe cried. "It's your dignity. He's destroying you." "I'm fine," Elijah lied, but he wasn't fine, and the war had only just begun. The following weeks at Apex Predator Gym were a descent into a specialized kind of hell. Brock Sterling had tasted blood, and like the bully he was, he wanted more. The viral video had fed his narcissism, boosting his engagement numbers, so he decided to make the Janitor series a regular feature on his social media. It started with accidents. Brock would finish a protein shake and deliberately drop the sticky bottle on the floor right after Elijah had mopped it. "Missed a spot, Washington," he would jeer, filming Elijah's stoic reaction for his Instagram story. Then came the scheduling changes. Linda Russo, with tears in her eyes, handed Elijah the new roster. "I'm so sorry, Eli," she whispered, checking over her shoulder to ensure Brock wasn't watching. "He wants you to clean the mats during the sparring sessions, while people are training." "It's unsafe, Linda," Elijah said softly. "I know. He said if you refuse, he'll fire you for insubordination. He knows about Chloe's tuition deadline. He's squeezing you." So Elijah became a moving obstacle. He scrubbed blood and sweat off the mats while fighters sparred inches from his head. He felt the wind of roundhouse kicks whizzing past his ears. Brock encouraged the students to ignore him, to treat him like furniture. "Don't stop for him," Brock would yell. "If he gets hit, that's his problem. Maybe it'll knock some sense into him." The psychological warfare was relentless. Brock started calling him the professor in a mocking, high-pitched voice. "Hey, professor, what do you think of that jab? Oh, wait, you're busy plunging the toilet." But the breaking point wasn't the insults. It was the physical pain disguised as training. One Tuesday evening, the gym was packed. Brock called Elijah over to the center ring. "Washington, get in here. We're short a pad holder." "I'm not a trainer, Mr. Sterling," Elijah replied, clutching his mop handle. "I'm the owner, and I'm telling you to hold the pads. Unless you want to walk out that door and explain to your daughter why you were unemployed." Elijah stepped into the ring. He put on the focus mitts. He knew what was coming. Brock didn't throw practice shots. He threw full-power malicious strikes. He aimed not for the center of the pad, but for the edges, designed to hyperextend Elijah's wrists and elbows. Whack! A hook slammed into Elijah's bad shoulder, an old shrapnel injury from his service days. Pain exploded like white lightning down his arm. Elijah didn't flinch. He absorbed it. His stance was perfect, his resistance solid. "Wow, look at that," Brock laughed, breathless, throwing a vicious elbow that grazed Elijah's ear. "Old man's got a hard head. Too bad there's nothing inside it." For 20 minutes, Brock used Elijah as a human punching bag, trying to get a reaction, trying to make him quit. But Elijah was a statue carved from granite. He breathed rhythmically, his dark eyes tracking every movement, dissecting Brock's flaws. Telegraphs the right cross, drops the left hand when kicking, heavy on the front foot. Elijah wasn't just enduring, he was downloading data. That night, long after the gym had closed and the lights were dimmed to the emergency setting, the Apex Predator gym was empty, or so it seemed. Elijah was supposed to be cleaning the locker rooms, but he found himself in front of the heavy bag in the back corner. The humiliation of the day burned in his veins. The image of Brock laughing, the pain in his shoulder. He dropped the mop. He peeled off his grey work gloves. He wrapped his hands with old, frayed scraps of cloth he kept in his pocket. He approached the bag. Snap. A jab. Fast as a cobra strike. The bag barely moved because the energy went through it. Pop, pop, bang. Jab, cross, left hook to the body. The sound was different, a sickening thud that spoke of bone-breaking power. Elijah moved. He danced. For the first time in years, the heavy burden of his life lifted. He wasn't a janitor. He wasn't a victim. He was a warrior. He threw a spinning back kick that nearly folded the heavy bag in half. Jesus H. Christ. The whisper came from the shadows. Elijah froze, snapping back into a defensive posture instantly. Coach Pop Miller stepped out from the manager's office. He was 65, a legend in the boxing world who had been pushed aside by Brock's new money management style. He held a cup of coffee, his mouth hanging open. I was just cleaning, Pop, Elijah stammered, quickly unwrapping his hands. "I'm sorry, I'll get back to work." "Shut up, son," Pop said, walking closer, his eyes wide. "I've been in this game 40 years. I trained gold medalists. I haven't seen footwork like that since the late 90s. Pop squinted at him. "You're Elijah, the Phantom Washington, Mid-Atlantic champion. You vanished after the accident in '05. Elijah looked down. "That man is dead, Pop. Now I just clean up other people's messes." "Does Brock know?" Pop asked. "No, and he can't. If he finds out, he'll fire me for lying on my application, or he'll make it worse." Pop shook his head, anger rising in his voice. "He's been torturing you for weeks, and you could kill him with your bare hands. Why, Elijah?" "Chloe," Elijah said simply. "Tuition is due in 2 weeks, $15,000. I have $200 in the bank." Pop looked at the heavy bag, then at Elijah. A dangerous idea formed in the old man's eyes. He pulled out his phone and opened Instagram. "Brock just posted again," Pop said, his voice grim. "It's a video of you cleaning the mats today." He captioned it, "Some people are born to serve. Some are born to rule. Know the difference." Pop turned the screen to Elijah. Beneath the post, the comments were vile, but one comment caught Elijah's eye. It was from Brock, replying to a fan. "I'd offer him a charity match, but we don't let the help touch the merchandise, unless he wants to put his paycheck on the line." Something inside Elijah snapped. It was a quiet snap, like a dry twig in a winter forest. "Pop," Elijah said, his voice trembling with a terrifying calm. "Does the gym still have that clause? The challenger's rights clause in the contract?" Pop nodded slowly, a grin spreading across his weathered face. "Yeah. Any employee can challenge a trainer for a bonus. It's an old rule, meant to encourage sparring partners. Brock never removed it because he thinks no one has the guts." "If I fight him," Elijah asked, "and I win, what's the purse?" "Winner takes all from the Knight's Gate, plus Brock's pride." Elijah looked at his scarred knuckles. He thought of Chloe crying at the kitchen table. He thought of the boot on his back. "Help me train, Pop," Elijah said. "I'm not going to fight him. I'm going to educate him." The challenge was issued the next morning, not with a shout, but with a piece of paper taped to Brock's office door. It was formal, citing the specific contract clause. Elijah Washington versus Brock Sterling. Exhibition match, 3 rounds. Winner takes the gate revenue. Brock laughed so hard he choked on his espresso. He live-streamed his reaction naturally. "Guys, you won't believe this. The actual janitor wants to fight me. I guess he wants to pay for his medical bills in advance." The internet exploded. It was David versus Goliath, but in the cruel age of social media, everyone was betting on Goliath to crush the bug. The tickets for Friday night sold out in 2 hours. People wanted to see a bloodbath. They wanted to see the alpha destroy the old man. The night of the fight, the atmosphere in Apex Predator Gym was suffocating. The air conditioning struggled against the body heat of 300 screaming spectators. Beer was spilled, bets were placed. In the red corner, Brock Sterling bounced on his toes, wearing a gold-trimmed robe. He looked massive, glistening with oil and arrogance. He winked at the ring girls, played to the cameras, and mimed slitting his throat at Elijah. In the blue corner, there was no music, no robe. Just Elijah Washington, wearing a pair of plain black shorts and cheap boxing shoes Pop had bought for him. His upper body was scarred, revealing a map of his past life. Bullet wounds, knife scars, muscles that weren't pumped for show but built for war. Linda Russo stood as the referee, her face pale. "Touch gloves," she whispered. Brock slapped Elijah's gloves hard, disrespectfully. "I'm gonna hurt you, old man. I'm gonna break something you can't fix." Elijah said nothing. He simply stepped back and raised his hands. The classic Philly shell stance. The bell rang. Brock exploded forward. He wanted the highlight reel knockout immediately. He threw a flying knee, aiming for Elijah's chin. Elijah didn't block it. He simply wasn't there. He pivoted 5 degrees to the left, and Brock sailed past him, crashing into the cage fence. The crowd gasped. "Slippery!" Brock growled, turning around. He unleashed a flurry of punches, hooks, uppercuts, overhands. Elijah moved like water. He slipped a jab by a millimeter. He ducked a hook so smoothly it looked like he was bowing. He parried the crosses with subtle taps of his gloves. For 2 minutes, Brock threw everything he had, and he hit nothing but air. Elijah hadn't thrown a single punch. "Fight me!" Brock screamed, frustrated, his chest heaving. "Stop running, coward!" Elijah stopped in the center of the ring. He dropped his hands completely. He looked Brock in the eye. "I'm not running," Elijah said, his voice cutting through the noise. "I'm waiting for you to make a mistake." Brock roared and charged, telegraphing a massive right haymaker, the same punch he had taught Caleb. The punch that left the jaw exposed. Now. Elijah didn't wind up. He didn't scream. He simply generated force from his feet, up through his hips, and snapped his left hand forward. A check hook, short, precise, surgical. It connected with the point of Brock's chin with a sound like a pistol crack. Brock Sterling's eyes rolled back into his head. His legs turned to jelly. He crumbled to the canvas face first, completely unconscious before he hit the ground. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy, stunned, terrified silence. Then Pop Miller started laughing, and the crowd erupted. Not for the alpha, but for the janitor. Elijah didn't celebrate. He didn't climb the cage. He knelt beside Brock and checked his airway, the instinct of a medic taking over. "He's okay," Elijah said to Linda. Just asleep. Elijah stood up, looked at the cameras streaming to millions, and walked out of the cage. But the victory was short-lived. The next morning, Elijah wasn't greeted as a hero. He was greeted by the police. A loud banging on his apartment door at 6 a.m. woke him and Chloe. 3 officers stood there. Elijah Washington? Yes. You're under arrest for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and intent to cause grievous bodily harm. What? Chloe screamed, grabbing her father's arm. It was a boxing match! It was a sport! Mr. Sterling claims he did not consent to a professional combatant, the officer said coldly, cuffing Elijah's hands. He claims Mr. Washington concealed his lethal training to entrap him. Mr. Sterling has a broken jaw and severe concussion. He's suing for $5 million and pressing felony charges. Elijah looked at Chloe, whose world was shattering again. It's okay, baby, Elijah said, though his heart was breaking. Call Pop. The narrative shifted instantly. Brock's expensive lawyers and PR team spun the story. Elijah wasn't a hero. He was a dangerous weapon who had tricked an innocent sportsman. They dug up his military record, painting him as an unstable killing machine. At jail, the janitor started trending. Elijah sat in a holding cell, staring at the concrete wall. He had won the fight, but he had lost the war. He was going to prison. Chloe would never go to Stanford. The darkness closed in. The courtroom was packed. It was the trial of the year, Sterling versus Washington. Brock Sterling sat at the plaintiff's table, wearing a neck brace and looking tragically injured. He dabbed at his eyes with a tissue. His lawyer, a shark in a 3-piece suit, was destroying Elijah's character. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the lawyer boomed. This man is a trained killer. He spent 20 years learning how to destroy human bodies. He lured my client, a fitness entrepreneur, into a cage and brutally assaulted him. This wasn't a sport. It was attempted murder. Elijah sat silently next to his public defender, a young, overworked woman who looked defeated before they even started. Chloe sat in the front row, holding Pop's hand, her eyes red from crying. Things looked hopeless. The judge seemed sympathetic to Brock. The evidence of Elijah's past was damning. I call my next witness, Elijah's lawyer said, her voice shaking. Coach Miller. Pop walked to the stand. He carried a small USB drive. Coach Miller, the lawyer asked, you were there that night. Was this a fair fight? It was more than fair, Pop grunted. Brock got off easy. Objection, Brock's lawyer shouted. Your Honor, Pop interrupted, looking at the judge. The prosecution claims Mr. Sterling was a victim of an unprovoked attack by a hidden professional. But I have evidence that proves Mr. Sterling knew exactly who Elijah was and that he planned to hurt him first. The courtroom murmured. Brock stiffened in his chair. I present Exhibit B, the public defender said, plugging the USB into the court system. Audio filled the courtroom. It was crystal clear. It was recorded on Pop's phone 2 days before the fight, inside Brock's office. Brock's voice. I know the old man used to be a boxer, Pop. I saw his file in the archives. That's why it's going to be so funny. Pop's voice. He's dangerous, Brock. Don't do this. Brock's voice. He's 50 years old and broke. I'm going to humiliate him. I'm going to break his ribs in the first round, make him beg, and get it all on camera. It'll be great content. If he gets permanent damage, who cares? He's just a janitor. Nobody cares about trash. The recording ended. The silence in the courtroom was different this time. It wasn't stunned. It was furious. The jury stared at Brock Sterling with disgust. The judge's expression turned to stone. Brock ripped off his neck brace, standing up. That's taken out of context. That's illegal recording. Sit down, Mr. Sterling, the judge roared. Then a new sound started. A quiet notification ping from a phone. Then another. Then 100. Chloe stood up in the back. She held up her phone. It's live, she whispered. While the trial was happening, Chloe had posted a video on TikTok. It wasn't a dance. It was a montage. Videos of Elijah cleaning up Brock's messes. Videos of Elijah helping students when Brock wasn't looking. Photos of her mother's medical bills. And finally, the audio recording Pop had given her. The caption, My dad isn't a criminal. He's a hero who swept floors to save my life. The video had 10 million views in 1 hour. The internet turned, the hashtag changed. Justice for Elijah. The verdict came back in under 20 minutes. Not guilty on all charges. The judge looked at Brock. Mr. Sterling, in light of this audio evidence, I'm recommending the district attorney look into charges of perjury and malicious prosecution against you. Get out of my courtroom. Brock Sterling lost everything. His sponsors dropped him before he left the building. The gym investors pulled out the next day. He was ruined, not by a punch but by the truth, 3 months later. The sign above the door was simple, painted in bold, clean letters, Guardian Academy. Elijah walked onto the mats. He wasn't wearing a gray uniform. He was wearing a coach's tracksuit. The gym wasn't fancy. It was an old warehouse, but it was clean and it was full. Kids from the neighborhood were there, single moms learning self-defense. And there, helping a new student with his footwork, was Caleb, the boy Brock had taught incorrectly. "Dad!" Chloe called out from the office. She was wearing a Stanford sweatshirt. "We just got another donation! A pro fighter from Vegas wants to fly in for a seminar!" Elijah smiled. It was a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Pop Miller walked up and clapped him on the shoulder. "Not bad for a janitor, huh?" "I'm not a janitor, Pop," Elijah said, watching his students. "I'm a teacher." He looked at the mop bucket in the corner. He kept it there as a reminder that dignity isn't in what you do, but in who you are. And that sometimes the quietest man in the room is the one you should fear the most. Elijah turned to the camera, breaking the fourth wall for the first time. His eyes were intense, filled with wisdom. Never let anyone define your worth by your paycheck. Stand your ground, protect your family, and remember, even the dirtiest floor can shine if you put in the work. But if you try to walk all over good people, you might just slip and fall. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice and redemption. See you in the next one.